So, yeah, I'm Matt Allen. I work out of the Des Moines NRCS office at the state office as a resource conservationist. My primary duty is the CRP program manager, and then, like many jobs, other duties as assigned, right? So, we'll talk a little bit about CRP and conservation practice standard updates. Again, quick agenda updates, CRP updates, conservation practice standard updates. Currently, we're working on the conservation cover 327 standard. As many of you may know, that's a really big standard when it comes to NRCS and particularly CRP, but it's utilized in EQIP and CSP as well. It encompasses a lot. There's a lot of information, and we're working through that. So I'll talk a little bit about that, and then some seeding calculator reminders of some of the updates we did last year for those that might have forgot, and then just one update that we have so far on that, and then maybe a few minutes for questions. I might mention this again, but I am a facilitator, whatever you want to call it, at a breakout session. It's more or less a Q&A, and so if there's things in here we want to discuss further, please come and we can certainly talk about those a little bit more and get some feedback. So, Farm Bill extension. So currently, on December 21st of 24, the President signed American Relief Act of 2025, which really in turn, it did some other things, but primarily what I'm talking about is a one-year extension of the 2018 Farm Bill, reauthorizing CRP retroactively to October 1st through September 30th. So, okay, that's nice. Well, where does that leave us now, right? What does that actually mean? It's available, but there's currently no sign-up for CRP. Typically at this time, I do have more information about CRP sign-ups and maybe a deadline or two, and at this point, we don't have that right now. So we're just kind of waiting and seeing and updating things we can in preparation for that, whatever that may look like. So offices cannot take new offers, and so we can do work and things with existing offers for NRCS technical side, status reviews, things like that. FSA fairly recently was given the okay to make contract and cost share agreement modifications that actually have the potential to increase cost and things like that. So otherwise, we're really at a standstill when it comes to CRP. So that's my big update for that. So every year I have gone and just over some numbers. I'll touch on those a little bit and then, like I said, move on to the practice update. So national cap is 27 million. It ramped up to 27 million in 2023, and so there was kind of a step process to get it to that in 2023. We've had 2 continuing resolutions or extensions of the Farm Bill, and so that stayed at 27 million. So last year, or 23, it got to 27 million. 24, we had a one-year extension, so it stayed there, and now we had another extension, and so it's thus at the same amount. However, current enrollment has increased to about 26 million acres. And so with that plus expiring acres this year, which will be a million-ish acres, 1.2 million acres, there'll be a couple million buffer, I guess, if you will. And again, who knows what's going on. Oh man, that shifted over. So real quick numbers. So national numbers are in the black. Iowa numbers are in the red on the right. They don't fluctuate a lot year to year. I mean, they're pretty big numbers. Just kind of where we're at. So we have hovered at the 1.6 million acre for a few years. This information actually came out of there's an FSA statistics site, it is public. It just came from their November 24 summary. That was the latest one I saw as of like 2 weeks ago or a week ago. So obviously that lags behind a little bit. These numbers will vary depending on what reports are pulled, when they're pulled, but they're going to be really close. So the grassland number, we don't have very much of that, but that has really nationwide taken off, and they've accepted a lot of those numbers, which has really pushed our CRP numbers towards that cap. And so that number is obviously really big over the last 2 or 3 years for that. I do want to highlight, the number of contracts in the country is about, 543,000 and change. Iowa has about 104,000 of those, which is about 19% of all contracts in the United States for CRP. So it's a tremendous workload. NRCS and FSA we're touching those contracts more than we have in the past, particularly NRCS doing status reviews and things like that. So status reviews this year was about 24 to 25,000 across the state for offices, and so it's a tremendous lift with that. We don't average a whole lot per contract, but again, we touch each individual contract multiple times. So this just kind of shows you where we were in 24 as far as expiring acres, and then what that means in number of contracts over the next few years. Obviously, we're climbing, and then it'll kind of at this point drop off in 28 and then start climbing again, just the nature of signups and things like that. So 27 is a really big year. The next couple years really are. So jumping into what I want to mention this. It's in my notes and I forgot. Back to the signup, CRP signup. Because we are getting close to the cap, if there is particularly a continuous signup, my guess is it will be similar to last year as far as having some sort of batching period, and so you have to have your offer or whatever in by a certain date, and that then goes to national. They review it, and then it comes back to the offices, and then at that point they can be processed. I don't know that for 100%, but if they did it last year and we're even closer to the cap this year, my guess is it will be something similar. Again, we're just not sure what that exactly is going to look like or when that may or may not come out. So the conservation practice standard update. I've talked about these, particularly 327. My update has been there is no update the last 2 years. And so this year we're able to do that, or able to start working on it. And so I wanted to just outline, I've talked about this, but it's like, well, why does this happen? And so why do we update these? How are we told to update these and that type of thing? So this is just a real quick overview of the National Conservation Practice Standard review process. And so really national reviews these every 5 years, or they're supposed to review or update their conservation practice standards every year. So they'll review those by subject matter experts. There'll be some sort of draft or revision or a new standard. We do have interim standards that are new. Typically most years. And so then there'll be an internal review of those for NRCS. And then those will be posted to the Federal Registry, allowing some some public comments. Then once they kind of gather all that information, really they're published. And at that point, the states have a year to update those. And so the STAR is kind of where we're at, or where, that's the process for practice standards when they come to us at the state level to start modifying and updating and things. And so that's where we're at. So when we talk about that, this is the process it's gone through. And then Iowa timeline has shifted. It was scrambling, trying to get them done right before the fiscal year, and things come up. And so field office staff really want, this information as soon as they can get them, particularly in the fall before they actually get into the field, so they know, what the standards are going to be for the next year. And so about this time, February, March, we're working on conservation practice standard updates with supporting documentation. April, we're looking to get first drafts sent out to multiple people. We're working with Tallgrass Prairie Center. We'll be working with biologists and field office, area office staff, and folks to kind of look at these drafts and provide input and feedback on those. June, we get those back, update the first draft version, send out a second draft in June, and then in July, receive those back, complete the second draft revision, and have those ready for LT, so leadership team, to ultimately review. Typically at this point, there's not really major changes. And then ultimately we want to have them ready by August. Basically sitting there, updated, ready to go, has been our goal the last couple years. It hasn't always rolled out that way. As many of you know, many things come up and whatever, but our goal is to have them ready in August, basically sitting there on the shelf, ready to then get posted to the FOTG. So Field Office Technical Guide Section 4, which is a public facing, website and tool for folks to go to see our latest standards. So planners and NRCS staff and partners, that's where they're pushed to find our latest updates, but you all have access to that as well. And so when things are updated, they're pushed there, and you can see our practice standards and supporting documentations and tools and things there as well. So I wanted to do a few definitions because we love acronyms and definitions, right? So I've already talked about the Conservation Practice Standard. So that's more of a federal, or a broad item or document that establishes a minimum level of acceptable quality for design, installation, and O&M. So again, that typically comes down from national. It's a federal or it's a national standard, right? And so states have been encouraged to really adopt these as is unless there's some major issues. And then we will look to do some updates in the practice standards. But really where some of the state refining comes in is the guidance document in particular, and then the IR. So the guidance document is a state document providing guidance on various aspects of the practice. So it gives considerations and overviews of things that can happen within the state. We give some limits and requirements. That then gets narrowed down even further to the implementation requirements, which is a state-approved documents used to develop site-specific implementation requirements of the practice standard, utilizing the guidance document to fill the IR out. And so that's a specific document that we work with through planning with the producer and really come up with a plan of, outlining what they need to do to implement that particular practice on their particular property for this particular practice or program or something. So kind of it's broad, and then it kind of narrows down to the site specific there. Tech notes, those are basically that provide guidance for specific technical subjects relevant to planning and implementation across multiple practices. So one tech note could be applicable for multiple practices. So instead of putting the same information in multiple practice documents, it's just we refer back to this one document in the case of a tech note. So that's kind of what that is. So Conservation Cover 327. So this is the current job sheet. I'm assuming maybe many of you are familiar with this or not. I'm not sure. But really it has information about fertilizer, lime, seedbed prep, seeding dates, species for both introduced and native species. And so what we're looking at doing is actually, again, we got to create guidance documents. And so we're pulling this apart to create a native guidance document and an introduced guidance document. And so those will be specific to each of those type of species. Same thing, implementation requirements will then have an introduced and a native IR. It's very government, right? We take one document and now we're spreading it into four or creating four. But again, the goal is to make sure we're keeping the good information, updating any information that might be outdated, looking for the latest information, but making it as clear as possible for both planners and producers ultimately is the goal. And so hopefully if, again, our ultimate goal is that will happen with this type of process and what we're planning on doing here. So again, we're looking at keeping the good, updating the maybe outdated or questionable or things that might have changed, and just providing the latest and greatest information, right? And so really at this point, it's a lot of formatting changes, again, going from this one document to four. So that's probably the major change, but there are some nuanced changes within each. So introduce, for example, We're looking at utilizing bulk seeding rates versus PLS, which will be more in line with our other practice standards. Now, we're looking at maintaining a minimum percent. If it's less than 80%, then they would need to then figure PLS and figure pounds. So utilizing that, and then a general fertilizer recommendation to get that started. So we once had these, they kind of went away, and now we're kind of reintroducing those possibilities. Things I'm talking about is they're in flux right now, right? Sarah's working with me on a lot of these. And so nothing's finalized yet. These are just ideas that we've been discussing. Some of them will be put in these, or a lot of these will be put in these drafts, really just to get the conversation started. And so looking for input and things like that with partners and whatnot. So we are working with the state office, area office, Tallgrass Prairie Center, other partners, DNR, and to make these, hopefully as solid as we possibly can and the most useful that we can. And so native changes or changes to the native side of the house. There aren't any real major ones at this point that, again, it's a lot of formatting, but things might get flushed out with this, first draft. One thing we've discussed as a possibility is moving the back end date of the spring seeding to potentially June 15th instead of July 1st. But I have a breakout session. Again, we want to discuss these things, or if you guys have ideas or things that work or don't work, I'm open to those discussions. We'll have a little bit more time later today. So those are like the meat of probably what we're updating. Those are the things that planners and staff will be utilizing probably the most as far as actually looking at and providing to producers and things like that. Tech notes, I mentioned those, right? These go across multiple practices. And so we looked at these and some of them are super old. I shouldn't say that because, anyway. Yeah, a while ago. And so some of the information was still solid, but we wanted to update some of them. We wanted to look at them, and they aren't directly 327 necessarily, but those impact or are applicable to 327 or conservation cover. And so again, we're looking at archiving some. So Tech Note 1, we're looking at archiving and then utilizing a National Plant Materials Tech Note 7, which talks about importance of seed quality to natural resource conservation practices. I think we sent that to you. I think Sarah sent that to you, right? To review and look at, because we're looking at referencing that instead of just updating and keeping our Iowa version, which is going to say very similar things. Is we reviewed that initially, and it's solid information, so why not use what we already have available? Tech Note 11, legume inoculants, and same type of thing, looking at archiving our version, but utilizing a plant material Tech Note 5. Instead of constantly updating ours, we'll utilize that as well at this point. And then there are some other Tech Notes, but Tech Note 27, which is seeding guidance for pothole riverine and other wetland-related long-term easements, we're looking at updating that. I have that out to some easement staff to review. I don't think there's going to be major updates. And then Tech Note 28, guidance for seeding natives on prairie reconstruction sites. These are abbreviated titles, but Sarah, I believe, is working with Laura Jackson on updating that one, I think. So, sorry. Dang it. Oh. My bad. So they're looking at updating that language and working together on that as well. And so, to make that as solid as possible. So we are also looking at creating a new one, which will be for interseeding. And so there was a little sprinkling of interseeding information in the current job sheet or the current information. And so instead of putting very similar information about interseeding, let's say into a native stand in multiple practice documents, let's just do one document and then refer back to that particular document. So that's ultimately kind of the main goal. And so we're working on that. We have a very rough draft of that at this point. So that's probably the one new thing as far as tech notes go as it relates to 327 and how that'll impact that. So I think our interseeding guidance currently is from 2007. Looking at updating that as well. Native seed calculator fiscal year 26 updates. So drum roll, right? Oh man, that cut off. Things shifted. Weird. So adding an interseeding, what is going on? I noticed I spelled interseeding wrong. So there's no check sheet for actually interseeding. So if you want to interseed and you put in that particular seed mix, it's going to show a bunch of red and that it doesn't meet. And so our thought is, well, let's actually create one that folks can see turns green, looks nice, right? And so whether that's going to be added to existing check sheets or an actual separate tab within the seeding calculator, we're talking about doing that as well. Otherwise, there's really not a whole lot of updates. Again, we're open to, if you have any suggestions, we'll certainly consider those and look at those. This is just a reminder slide from last year. So the location did change. It was in the FOTG section 4 under 327. The location, of the native seed calculator itself. That was taken out of there and put in, it remains in section 4, but an ecological science tools folder. And then native seed calculator, seems redundant, but we changed the name. And currently it is native seeding calculator. It was 327 conservation cover native seeding calculator. Well, it's a native seeding calculator, which we use for multiple practices. Added a couple moisture regimes, dry music and wet music, and then added a check sheet tab for 420, which is wildlife habitat planting. I think that's it. So anyway, so if you have questions, I think we have time for questions maybe. If not, I'll be at the breakout session this afternoon. We can certainly discuss or just snag me whenever we got breaks. So
we'll just push it a little bit into our break.
Okay.
You said it's available but no sign up for CRP. How does that relate to re-ups?
It's a good question. I had questions about what happens if we don't have a sign up. I don't know quite yet. I'm not sure. My guess is we will have a sign up, but I don't know what that's going to look like. So I don't know. I have been asked to potentially start putting together information about just that, what happens or what are the options if we don't. But
and then along with that, in 2026, it would be the pollinators re-up 2026, 2027. As like a grower, or do we need to make sure we have the forms for that, or if they re-up it, would it not be? So I think the government kind of was like, that was a lot of pollinator for some really large acres. I don't know if we want to keep doing it that way. Would they re-up the same program?
No, there will be opportunity. I mean, they've already limited in continuous 10 acres per track, I believe. And so you can't just do a huge field in continuous, but you are able to do it in general. So there would be a potential option to enroll some of these larger acres into a general contract and stay that way. Excuse me. There are other options with SAFE, state acres for wildlife enhancement and things. So there's actually more opportunities now than in the past as far as programs available.
Yep.
Yeah.
What's the process of a sign-up review?
Ultimately it starts with FSA and their leadership, and then it kind of rolls down from there. I don't know the ins and outs of that. I'll call Al out a little bit. He'll be at the breakout session as well, and he might be able to give a little bit of a better idea. But again, right now we don't know what that's timing, what that exactly is going to look like. But typically that rolls out, from FSA down to say, hey, continuous CRP sign up starts, I think last year was January 12th. And the batching period was March 15th, I think. And so re-enrolls are new that wanted to be considered would have to be in that first batch. It would go to national, then they would review it, send it back down to the offices, and then we as NRCS then could go do the field visits, the planning, and things like that. But the inner workings of actually getting a sign up out of FSA, I don't really know those things. So
So Farm Bill is extended, which means it can be,
correct.
but they can decide,
Yeah, and I don't know all the ins and outs. I mean, the Farm Bill, there's a lot of uncertainty at this point. And so the Farm Bill, the 2018 Farm Bill does have language in it that there has to be a general sign. But as we've seen, things are kind of up in the air, and what that really is going to look like and shake out, we just don't know. Right. Yeah. So yeah, I'll be at breakout session this afternoon, and then look forward to talking with you.